Hi there. This is Two Legs Better, and I would like to talk about power in this episode. It's well, I've been teaching in business school in United States, in China, and in Hong Kong Special Administration Region in China. Well, the thing is, power is everywhere. Power for academics, we like to use power as a mechanic to explain things, explain dynamics. So when things happen, power can be used to explain it. But it's very difficult to concretely understand what power is. And in today's episode, I will show you an exercise that's used in the classrooms and training sessions. I use it multiple times in my training, a lot of times in my training sessions. And hopefully it will elucidate what this idea is, what power is, and how that applies to real life. Because you think about it, what currently happens in the world. You look at Putin from Russia. You look at Donald Trump from United States. You look at Xi from China, and many other countries. You look at the political landscape. You look at the world, and there are all kinds of things happening. And it's more than ever that the power has come to the surface. People don't even pretend to. They don't even pretend anymore, right? So I think to be honest, to be an honest academic, we want to look at that. And to be fair, I'm not going to predict anything. I'm not going to judge anything. I'm just trying to explain how things work. So that's the purpose of this exercise. So now let me introduce you to something we use in the classroom. Okay, so this is what we have. Okay, so now suppose you have you have a government funding. You have a funding body that says, okay, you can apply for funding. Okay, then there are three companies, three organizations try to apply, and one is called a Stockman, and the other is called Turbo, and a third one is called the United. Okay, now when we do the real exercise, we have a bunch of things that we can do to a lot of background information. We talk about these things like what kind of research they are doing. Supposedly, this is a federated science. It's probably federal, so it's something that we can help the whole world or something. Whatever that is, those are the nuances just to add to the realism. But let's look at the structure. The structure, that is something behind really. You look at the world. The world is the same. Okay, the world has limited resources available, and then we try to gain the resources, right? So you look at all three companies. You look at all of them here. Okay, so you have a Turbo, United, and Stockman, and so you can see stipulated by the rules, if only one company apply, then there's nothing. You're not going to be granted anything. So that's out of the question. That's out of the question, right? So now you look at that. Whenever you have Stockman here, so Stockman, you can see the outcome is better. So the Stockman with the Turbo, that's $440,000. Stockman and United, $380,000. And Turbo and United, that's only $300,000. Okay? So based on that alone, you can tell that, all right, so maybe they have an unequal power. So now, when you think about power, what do you think about? You think about dominance, you think about prestige, you think about authority, you think about respect, a lot of things you think about, right? But ultimately, one way to materialize power is the ability to acquire resources. It doesn't matter how you view it. If you have money, you have resources. If you have power, you have access to resources. That's kind of a, they work both ways. You have resource, you have power. You have power, you have resources, and that's just how it works. So in this case, you can see that Stockman has access to more power than the other two, right? And then Turbo is in the second place because if it's collaborated with Stockman, they have more access. If collaborate with United, that's less. So United is the weakest one, right? Whenever he's involved, it's not as much. And then here's the kicker: if all three of them collaborate, then you gain $480,000. So that's $40,000 more than Stockman and Turbo work together, right? So you can see that with all three work together, you do have more resources. However, the additional resources may or may not justify that person, that company, right? So in this case, that creates the power differential. So the power is different. So what it means is that when we give it to students and say, okay, so this is what you do, and what do they do, and this is basically something they do. Okay, let's see. Okay, so this is basically what they do, right? You can see it seems like Stockman can bring in $260,000 and Turbo only $180,000, and United is merely $120,000. Okay, so but if they all work together, the money is only $480,000. That's not enough to distribute it to all of them according to that, right? So what this creates is a power differential here. Now, are you following me on this? in class, it usually takes a while for people to really come to terms with this. Now, there are different ways to understand this. You may say, yeah, well, does it really mean they have power? Well, we talk about the results, right? Results says more. So when we give it to students, this is what we usually do. I divide them into 3-person groups, and each person will be assigned to one of the roles, and they will negotiate with each other and then come back to me and to show me what they got. On average, Stockman gets the most. Stockman usually gets the most resources because people realize the power there and people respect that. And Turbo is the second, and United is the third. United usually gets the least. However, it's not always that way. Let's put it that way, okay? Why? Because power corrupts. What do I mean by power corrupts? You think about it, if you are Stockman, you know you are powerful. Would that change your attitude? Would that make you more arrogant toward the other people? But the thing about power is this: power is relational, is relative. When people respect you, give you power, you have power. And when people don't, the power is fragile, because in this case, they can easily take you out. They can take you out and still get the outcome, but not as much. Where is it? Not as much as originally thinking, but they can still do that. Yeah, here it is. So this is usually what happens is that, of course, we have a process. They can interact with each other. So usually Stockman would come out and then talk to Turbo and say, okay, you and I should collaborate because you see we are the more powerful one, right? So we get the resources, we'll divide. But I'm stockman, so I get more. You need to give me, maybe 240 or even more than that, 260 or even 300. And that's when the deviation comes, because stockman feels very powerful and you got to collaborate with me, so you got to give me more. Now, that attitude sometimes can backfire, because when you have power, what do you want to do? You want to enlarge your power. And power is a drug. Power is like a drug that's addicted, because when you have power, you want to have more. What's the ultimate power? The ultimate power is ultimate dominance. The ultimate power is total dominance, and there's no challenge. And that's what autocracy is, right? So if you have an autocrat, and you have in the old days, in the past, like in China, you have the emperor. The emperor usually have the absolute power. They have absolute power over everybody else, okay? But only if people respect that, people obey. When people don't obey, it usually turns out really badly. So that's kind of the logic in power, but also the doom of power. Because in order to maintain your power, you need to destroy others' powers, and you need to take away other people that's in your way, right? You want to establish absolute power. But nowadays, it's more difficult than ever to establish absolute power. But the thing is, when you on your way to absolute power, you probably will destroy others' livelihood. When that happens, it actually gives more fear for people, and for the autocrat, because at some point you have to think about not just yourself, but also your offsprings, right? Your family and your children in the future, right? So you need to think about that. This is why almost all autocracy wants, like, they want to pass it on to their own family, their children or something. And that's like the obsession with power. But that usually backfires, because everybody wants more power. You take away others' powers, and the people are going to resist. And how they resist? They can form alliances. So like in this case, in some of the time, the Turbo and the United, they form a coalition. When the lesser powerful parties have formed coalition, they can be more powerful than the dominant power. It's basically, we all know what's the largest power now in the world, but if you piss off your coalitions, your friends, and especially if you turn them into foes, it's going to be dangerous, because for each one of them, maybe they are less powerful, but when they are united, they can be even more powerful than you. It's also kind of the logic behind the union against the management. So, and that happens. When that happens, wacky things could happen. I've seen many times Stockman is excluded in the final coalition. Although without Stockman, they can only get $300,000. That's $140,000 less. Almost 1/3 less than they could have gotten, right? If you consider 180, that's even more than 1/3 compared to what they could have gotten. But because they cannot work with the Stockman, because they are too arrogant, they are totally kicked out of the game. So that's one way it could end up. And there are also other ways. Other ways is the Stockman could be defeated. So when the United and Turbo form a coalition, they come to Stockman and say, okay, we have decided our coalition is firm, and we will go ahead with or without you. And you can join. When you join, you bring in more money, right? That's 180. but we are going to divide that among the three of us. So you probably get, 60,000 or 100,000. We'll give you something to keep you in the game, but you need to give us something to benefit us in order to get in. So the most powerful party becomes the least powerful party, which it doesn't happen very often. Most people just like the status quo. This is truly fascinating, because you think about it, this is a totally arbitrary scenario, right? So all the power comes from who you are and about the rules. But when I assign it to students, no students have more power than the other ones, and yet they act upon the roles real quickly. In real life, that's even more so. You think about somebody is occupying the key and powerful positions, they almost demand respect and authority immediately. That's how it works in real life. So what can we learn from this? What can we learn from this exercise? What we learn is this. First, power is really, really useful. It can get you what you desire in general. Okay, so power is really, really useful. So you cannot underestimate power. You have to pay attention to that, and otherwise you're going to lose. Okay, so you have to pay attention to power, because power can get you what you want. And the second one is, power is not absolute. So pursuing absolute power, absolute dominance is dangerous. It's very dangerous. It could backfire and it can destroy you. So some humility in absolute power is really, really important. And then the third one is, power comes from coalition. So being a nice person in power, that's actually works better for you. And not only in human society, but also in other societies, like other social animals, like tigers or gorillas, and even chimpanzees. So anywho, thank you for listening to this end. If you come this long, please subscribe and help grow the channel, and then come back. I will talk more. And the next time I probably will talk about trust, how we build trust and how trust works, especially in different societies, like in China, like in other places. And this is Two Legs Better from New Zealand. So long for today, and see you next time. Bye-bye.